Council Solicitor will now read out a statement.
Yes, everybody, this is just the usual reminder that I now give you at the start of these meetings. Just to remind you that the meeting is going to be broadcast. It will be recorded for subsequent broadcast by the authority's internet site. The images can be used for training purposes. Public seating area will also be on camera, so everybody should be just aware of that, and that by being present in the public area you are consenting to the use of your image in the recordings. The Chair has discretion to terminate or suspend filming if he feels that continuing to do so would prejudice the proceedings or continued filming might infringe the rights of any individual. And then just a few practical things. Please can you ensure that you use your microphones at any time that you want to speak? Can you indicate that you want to speak so that you can be called, because then when you put your microphone on the camera will turn to you? And can you also turn off mobile phones? Because even if they're on silent, they will interfere with the recording system. And can you also indicate if you're going to move or second the motion so that the microphone can be turned on? Thank you.
Right, welcome to the full council meeting of Wednesday the 28th of January. First item on the agenda, apologies.
Councillor Bakery, Mr Mayor.
Yes, Mr Mayor, and Councillor Graham Davis.
Yeah. Right. No, item number 2, declarations of interest. Councillors, I bring your attentions to both A and B in this item. Is there any declarations of interest?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to declare an interest in item 20, the Leisure and Culture Trust, as I'm a member of the board, and also item 23, the Statutory Youth Service. I'm trustee of Trialis Boys and Girls Club, who are included in the report.
Mr Mayor, I'm going to declare interest on item 20, Leisure and Culture Trust, because I'm on a board member.
I think I will have to declare interest on item 20, as I'm also a trustee of the Trialis Boys and Girls Club. Any other declarations of interest? Right, then we go on to agenda item number 3, social services and the social regeneration meeting of Tuesday, the 16th of December.
Move, Mr Mayor.
Second up.
Second, Mr Mayor.
Any questions? Any comments? Councillors, can I ask you to vote, please? Carried.
Thank you, that's carried.
Item number 4, Cabinet meeting of Wednesday the 17th of December. Is there a proposer?
Yes, move, Mr Mayor.
Seconder?
Second, Mr Mayor.
Any questions? Any comments? Can I ask you all to vote now, please, councillors? That's carried. Agenda item number 5, Cabinet meeting of Friday the 19th of December.
Yes, move, Mr Mayor. Second, Mr Mayor.
Any questions? Any comments? Councillors, can I ask you to vote, please? That's it. That's carried. Item number 6, Planning and Licensing Committee meeting of Wednesday the 7th of January.
I move, Mr Mayor.
Second, Mr Mayor.
Any questions? Any comments? Councillors, can I ask you to vote, please? That's carried. Item number 7, full council meeting of Wednesday the 7th of January. Is there a proposer?
Yes, move, Mr Mayor. Second, Mr Mayor.
Questions? Any comments? Can I ask you to vote, please, councillors?
Move, Mr Mayor.
Second, Councillor Tubby. Any questions? Any comments? Right, can I ask you to vote, please, councillors? That's carried. Agenda item number 9, Rights of Way Committee, Monday the 12th of January. Councillor
Move, Mr Mayor.
Moved by Councillor Jones, seconded. Councillor Tubby. Right. Any questions? Any comments? Can I ask you to vote, please, councillors? That's carried. Agenda item number 10, Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council Budget and Efficiencies Programme for 2015-16, the Public Consultation Report. I believe Councillor Brendan Toomey is taking this.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, this report brings to members' attention the outcome of Phase 3 of the Council's Budget and Efficiencies Programme for 2015-16. The report is some 48 pages of detailed responses to a public consultation exercise undertaken primarily through November of last year. Section 2 of the report sets out the public consultation methodology, which included an online survey, leaflets, drop-in sessions, roadshows and a live media session. The results of the surveys are set out in appendices 1 to 7 on pages 33 through to 67, which includes a workshop of voluntary action Merthyr Tydfil staff, which was held at Zoe Chapel on the 26th of November. Mr Mayor, having seen all the evidence that has been gathered at a viewing session just a couple of weeks ago, it is now becoming clear that the people of the county borough realise the enormity of the problems that this council, along with all other councils, are facing in terms of cuts that have been handed down by central government. On behalf of the council, I wish to thank all those members of the public that engaged in the consultation process, and I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank our staff who helped during the consultation process, and in particular Mr Idris Evans and the partnerships team for compiling the format, collating the responses and bringing this report forward to council this evening. Mr Mayor, I move that the content of the report be noted as set out at recommendation 6.1 on page 32 of the report.
Mr Mayor, in seconding the recommendation on page 32 that the contents of the report be noted, may I refer members to page 36 and the response in respect of council tax, and you will see there that the results received were in favour of increasing council tax and maintaining services by a majority of 79%, which obviously is encouraging in terms of the population's wishes for us to secure and maintain services. However, I have to point out that despite that enthusiasm from the population, thanks very much to the Condemn government in Westminster, we just simply can't raise our council tax. We also have to look at severe cuts, including redundancies. So I would thank the Condemn government for that, but I would second the motion, obviously.
Any questions? Any comments? Councillor Mitten.
Yeah, just an observation, Mr Mayor. If we refer to page 55 of the papers, and I appreciate that we have a statutory obligation to consult with members of the public, but It's just an observation that I think we should, you know, learn lessons from not just this consultation phase, but previous ones over a number of years. For instance, the road shows there, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the majority of those are midweek dates, 9 AM to 1 PM. It's an observation. Future consultations, maybe consider having those on a weekend for those people who work full-time to be able to participate.
An answer, Councillor Williams.
If I may respond, Chair, Mr Mayor, I would, however, point out to Councillor Mitten that obviously those sessions were held at times when it would be expected to be busy in the town centre. If you notice, they are farmers' market, town centre market, and indeed places like Asda and Dowler's Top.
Mr Mayor, if I can add to that as well, the point is well made by Councillor Mitten. However, the road shows were just one form of consultation, and there were many other forms that the public could engage in if they so wished.
Is that accepted? Yep. Any other comments, please? No. Right, councillors, I ask you to vote on... Oops, page... What's the 32, yeah. The recommendation 6.1 on page 32. Will you please vote? That's carried. Agenda item number 11, the Treasury Management Policy Statement and the Annual Investment Strategy for 2014-15 in the year review. Councillor Williams is taking this.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I hope members are sitting comfortably so we can go through it. As it says, the purpose of the report is to for members to receive the in-year review of Treasury Management for 2014-15, and paragraph 1.1 sets out that it's a requirement of the CIPFA Code of Conduct of Practice on Treasury Management that we actually receive this every year. We do receive it every year. It's a full and detailed statement. I'm not going to go through it, but I will take questions or receive any comments, and in that respect I then move the recommendation on page 78.
Councillor Toomey, second it.
Yes, I'm happy to second the recommendation, Mr Mayor.
Any questions? Any comment? Any questions? No? Any comments? No? Right, councillors, can I ask you to vote, please? That's carried. Agenda item number 12, the annual Treasury report of 2013-14. I believe Councillor Williams is taking this.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is also an annual requirement, and it's a requirement through CIPFA. As you can see, the report is attached. The recommendation is on page 92, that we receive the annual Treasury report for 13-14, and that the actual 2013-14 prudential and Treasury indicators be approved. If anybody wants explanation of the indicators, suggest pick up the phone to Steve tomorrow morning. I move.
Got a second that?
Yes, second, Mr Mayor.
Any questions? Any comments? Right. The recommendations is on page 92. Recommendation 6.1 and 6.2. Can I ask you to vote, please? That's carried. Agenda item number 13, the Flossifan Community Fund allocation.
So I need to declare an interest there. Okay.
Right. Agenda item number 13, Flossifan Community Fund allocation of funding. Proposer for this, Councillor Toomey.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, this is a straightforward report to recommend to Council the allocation of funding following a meeting of the Fossefran panel on the 4th of December of last year. Council will be aware of the evaluation criteria for applications, but for completeness is reminded of this in section 2 of the report. Council will note from section 3 of the report on page 103 that 3 applications were considered, and of the 3 applications, the panel agreed to support Rock UK subject to the usual various conditions. With regard to the Central Beacons Mountain Rescue Team, agreement was given in principle to support this application, subject to match funding. A further report to Council giving an update is anticipated in February. And Dowless Male Voice Choir was not supported because the application was for revenue funding. Moving on to the recommendation, 7.1 on page 104, I move that the allocations totalling £500,000 to Rock UK be approved.
So second up.
Yes, Mr Mayor, I take
Councillor
great pleasure in seconding this report, and particularly the award to Rock UK and the fact that Central Beacons will be having a report back to us, so hopefully they will then pick up the remaining amount that they require for their new vehicles. Disappointed about Dowless Male Choir, but at the end of the day, obviously, it is a revenue application, so we have to accept the rules. I second.
Any questions? Any comments? Right, recommendations 7.1 is page 104. Can I ask you to vote, please, councillors? No, one more. Oh, sorry, yeah. Agenda item number 14, the Royal British Legion Poppy Appeal. Let's take this, Brendan.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, this report is to advise Council of the money collected from the 2014 Poppy Appeal in Merthyr Tydfil County Borough. Members will note that over £25,000 was collected for last year's Poppy Appeal from the people of Merthyr Tydfil, which by all accounts is an all-time record. As the WLGA spokesperson for Armed Forces, I have very close links with the Royal British Legion in Wales, Mr Mayor, and know first-hand of the excellent work that it does for former Armed Forces personnel. And I'm sure all members will agree it's at times like this we feel extremely proud to come from and represent this community. And on behalf of the Council, I applaud the people of the County Borough for digging very deep indeed into their pockets despite the very difficult times in which we live. Thanks and recognition must also go to the many volunteers who helped the RBL in selling the poppies and indeed all the other merchandise that now goes towards the annual appeal. Mr Mayor, I'm happy to move the recommendation 5.1 on 106 the report that the contents of the report be noted.
So second up.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As the Council's Armed Forces champion, I am more than happy to second and actually to endorse the comments of the Leader of the Council in respect to the work done by the RBL and the money given by the people of Merthyr Tydfil towards that appeal. Absolutely outstanding. Well done, everybody, and I second the motion.
Any questions? Any comments? No. Can I ask you to vote, please, councillors? Agenda item number 15, the South East Wales Valley Local Transport Plan. I believe Councillor David Jones is taking this.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. The purpose of the report is to seek council approval for the draft South East Wales Valley's Local Transport Plan we have produced jointly with the 4 other authorities named in the report. Secondly, to approve RCT as the lead authority to incorporate any minor amendments recommended by the 5 authorities prior to submission to Welsh Government. Finally, that following Welsh Government approval, that the plan is adopted by Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council. The draft plan is the outcome of the Cabinet-approved report of November 2014, where the Welsh Government required all local authorities to produce a local transport plan by the end of January 2015. These LTPs will replace the 4 regional transport plans that are currently in place. Should the plan be approved, it is targeted to be published by the end of March 2015. Welsh Government issued formal guidance on producing LTPs, and the key points included that LTPs should not include schemes relating to the rail or trunk road networks, as these will be delivered directly by Welsh Government, and that joint working between local authorities was permissible. Each capital scheme approved will require ongoing revenue commitment from the relevant local authority for items such as maintenance cost, etc. And the Welsh Government revenue funding will continue to be available for non-commercial, socially necessary bus services, road safety education, training and publicity. Subject to any questions or comments, I move the recommendations at 6.1, 6.2 and 6.3 on page 110.
Is that a second up? Second, Mr. Mayor. Any questions? Councillor Tom.
Just in case you thought I'd gone to sleep, Mr. Mayor, sitting here this evening, having said nothing so far, just draw colleagues' attention to the financial implications, if I may, on page 109. Begin by saying I'm intrigued with the first sentence that says local authorities should be creative in seeking additional funding, which I find almost mildly amusing, but the real question is that is this extra funding factored into our own medium-term financial plan, and what are the likely figures that we will be looking at in the future?
It's as far as the plan is concerned. It's because this is actually grant-funded monies, then that would have a net impact on our planning going forward. For the actual figures involved, I'm sorry I don't have those with me. So again, I can just let you have those figures when I just have the figures tomorrow morning.
Any other questions? Any comments? Right, the recommendations is laid down on page 110. Can I ask you to vote, please, councillors? Agenda item number 16, the local commissioning plan for supporting people in 2015 to 18. I believe Councillor Carter is taking this one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I'm not going to go through this report in much detail. It's a relatively straightforward report, and I'm sure all members have read it thoroughly and the 33 pages of the plan. I'm happy to go straight to the recommendations set out on page 116 in 6.1, the Supporting People Local Commissioning Plan 2015 to 18 be approved, subject to members' questions and comments. Mr. Mayor.
I will second that. Councillor Smith. Any questions? Councillor Mitt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could I just ask, in relation to the report, what the membership is, i.e. who makes up the Supporting People Planning Group?
The membership's listed outlined in the report itself. It's made up of local government officers, members from the Health Board, Probation and other support agencies, including the third sector.
Can I talk? Sorry. Mark, sorry, can you just refer me to that page? Because I couldn't see it for looking. Sorry, just for clarification then, that says there, which I did read, 1.2 on 113, the programme is a working partnership, but my question then, I'll be more specific, local decisions are being made, so i.e. names, officers, local partner names, directors, etc.?
I don't have in front of me the list of the names, but I can certainly provide you with that. It's a comprehensive group that covers most of the local providers and key representatives from the main statutory agencies.
Just to clarify, the reason I ask that is because decisions are being made on budget cuts, i.e. Domestic abuse for women was one in particular, and that was the reason that I asked that, because obviously, you know, that it does impact upon us locally. So just wanted to clarify that for the officer. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other questions?
If I turn to page 150, Mr. Mayor, where it details costs and the spend plan, halfway down the page it says people with learning disabilities, 18, £201,431.13. Not terribly clear to me where that figure comes from if all the other columns say naught.
I don't have the details in front of me at the moment, Councillor Thomas, but I'm certainly be able to provide that to you.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I mean, shouldn't it be part of the report if you're looking at figures and you're looking at columns of noughts, and then to appear with 201,000 in another column is sort of rather not good practice, I would have thought.
Sorry, I don't know if this is helpful, but because there are zeros in the client units of the previous ones, there's therefore no spend. But because there are 18 in the client unit at that level, then there is a spend.
As always, Carys, perfectly clear. Thank you very much indeed.
Any other questions? Councillor Tydfil?
I was just wondering, it says there are 45 men without a fixed abode. Is that right? What's the definition of no fixed abode? Are they living on the streets or...?
The definition of no fixed abode is somebody that doesn't have an address where things can be sent to. They're not necessarily living on the streets, but they're moving between various different places.
Any other questions? Any comments? No. The recommendation is on page 116. Can I ask you all to vote, please, councillors? Oops. That's carried. Agenda item number 17, proposal to fund part-time nursery places in the nursery and primary schools. I believe Councillor Jones is taking this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, members would have read the report of 37 pages. I'm not going to go through the 37 pages, but I should say from the outset that this is a very important report, and I'm sure that members will have read it, and I will share my views with you in a moment regarding the report overall. But again, I must stress that this report is of significant importance. It is my intention this evening to remind members of the more important information featured in the report so that a decision on the proposal can be made. In fact, the whole basis of the report is captured in the opening paragraphs of the report at 1.1 and 1.2, because at 1.1 and 1.2 what it says is the number of nursery settings within the county borough, together with the 3 non-maintained educational providers within the childcare section. Paragraph 1.2 brings it all together, I feel. Schools currently offer full-time or part-time nursery places or a mixture of both. The current mixture of full-time and part-time provision across the county borough means that many schools have no space to admit children in the term following their 3rd birthday. There is an inequality of provision at present. Many 3-year-olds have to wait for up to 2 terms until they are allocated a nursery space in a school. This means that the authority is in breach of its statutory obligation to provide nursery education. Therefore, it is proposed that with effect from September the 2015, all children, I say it again, all children, would be offered a part-time nursery place in the term following their 3rd birthday. If one then moves on to paragraph 2, it reminds us of our ambition, where we wish to be. The authority wishes to improve the outcomes for pupils within the foundation phase. Currently, the authority has placed 22 out of 22 authorities in terms of that foundation phase. Other authorities with similar levels of deprivation fund part-time nursery places, and children are achieving higher standards than in Merthyr Tydfil. Evidence suggests that it is the quality of education rather than the quantity and the continuity of education which have the biggest impact on pupil attainment. Paragraph 3 then takes us into the legislative framework, and I can give you some good news. I don't intend going through the 4 pages of legislation. Suffice to say that it mainly refers to a whole raft of statutory duties imposed on a local authority in the area of nursery education. And if we quickly move then over to paragraph 4, which is informing us as to the current position, where we are now in 2015, paragraph 411 is worth mentioning, as this reinforces the key messages included elsewhere within this report. And I'll just briefly read paragraph 411. The recent information report to Cabinet, entitled Sufficiency of Nursery Education Places, on the 17th of December, at Appendix 1 if you wanted to read it when you go home, indicated that the authority is failing to meet its statutory obligation to offer a part-time nursery place to every 3-year-old in the term following their 3rd birthday. Currently, this is important, more than 200 children aged 3 who are eligible for a part-time nursery place in the current academic year will be unable to access a place until September 2015. However, the authority would meet its statutory duty if part-time nursery places are funded across all nursery and primary schools, as this would create capacity for an additional 443 nursery pupils. From the 1st of September 2015, this would establish an equitable system enabling every 3-year-old to be offered a part-time nursery place in the term following their 3rd birthday. So what the authority has concluded is that there would be sufficiency of part-time nursery places within schools and the non-maintained educational providers to meet demand if part-time nursery places are offered in schools with effect from the 1st of September 2015. In terms of the time, that is, how long should a part-time session be if in fact members are thinking about voting for the proposal this evening? They may be asking themselves, how long should a part-time session be? That is shown in paragraph 441, or 41 under B, which is time, in which it says councillors need to consider whether 12.5 hours a week for a part-time nursery place is sufficient to meet the educational needs of nursery pupils in the authority. The statutory requirement for a nursery place is 10 hours a week. However, our proposal will offer a part-time place of at least 12.5 hours a week in line with current educational practices in Caerphilly, Cardiff, Newport and Blaenau Gwent, all of whom offer part-time nursery education of 12.5 hours a week. I'm not going to mention what Rhondda and Taff do. They are out consulting at the moment in terms of some 15 hours a week. I don't want to confuse the issue by going into that in too much detail. If we go to the next important section, which is the responses to the consultation regarding the proposal contained in paragraph 451. And you can see the proposal mentioned again, the way that we want to go in this authority. And the results shown in 453 indicate that agreement in support of the proposal was 57%. In other words, the majority favoured the proposal. If we now turn over to the financial implications, we're coming to the end now, I'll read 6.1 because it is of vital importance to this report. 6.1 says the proposed changes to nursery provision are currently estimated to deliver financial savings of £278,000 in the part year, September 2015 to March 2016, and £422,000 over a full financial year thereafter. Reduced funding to schools will impact upon governing bodies as they consider the management of the delegated budget in relation to the number of teaching and non-teaching posts in these schools. The implementation of the nursery proposal will put some posts at risk, including within the catering service, as school meals will no longer be required for nursery pupils. And then we move on to 6.2, which is a very important issue, again, in consideration of this report. The local authority scheme of delegation for financing schools. That's contained in 6.2.1, and very quickly through it, at present, all nursery places are funded based on whether the place provided is full-time or part-time. That is obvious. If the local authority scheme of delegation is not changed to reflect this proposal, then full-time nursery places will continue to be funded. Therefore, the delegation of funding to schools must be adjusted to come into line with the proposal. And 6.4 produces the results of the school forum consultation, which took place, first of all, on the 25th of November 2014. The precise detail, for those that want to read it, is contained in appendix number 3. But if we come over to the next page and come halfway down the page, you will see that the members of that Heads Forum voted 9 against and 3 for the proposal. Now, I should say that that doesn't surprise me, because really, when you look at the makeup of the forum, they are head teachers, and really, they are voting, if they would have voted for the proposal, they would have been voting basically against their own head teachers in the schools up and down the county borough. So I could well understand why they took the stance they did at the school forum. If we now come over to the final paragraph, basically, before the recommendations, we come over to paragraph 7. Because the members of the school forum voted the way they did, we as a local authority have had to make a formal request to the Welsh ministers to approve revision to the scheme of delegation. That's in accordance with the school funding regulations 2010 section 28. And the local authority has requested that the proposed change to the scheme of delegation be approved with effect from the 1st of September 2015, subject to the Council's decision this evening. As you will be aware, each local authority is statutorily required to set the school's budget before the 14th of February 2015. That's why this report is so urgent this evening. And therefore, a definitive position with respect to this proposal is required in order to do so. This is the reason ministerial approval is being sought at this point in time. And the final paragraph there in section 7 is 7.4. The local authority is aware that no revised scheme is to come into force unless approved by the Welsh ministers in accordance with the School Funding Wales Regulations 2010. However, the local authority will continue to fail to meet its statutory obligations with regard to providing sufficient nursery education places if the scheme cannot be approved as proposed above. With that, I ask members now to move over to section 10, which contain the recommendations. I'll move the recommendations one at a time. The proposed changes to the scheme of delegation be approved. The change is from part-time to from full-time to part-time. In 10.2, the proposed transitional arrangements to the scheme of delegation be approved. Briefly, minor concessions that the local authority made. One is to the only remaining nursery school in Merthyr Tydfil that will feel the effects more than any other of the primary schools throughout the Merthyr Borough. We've made certain concession regarding the funding to that school for this or the next financial year. And then finally, there's another transition arrangement where schools have already started operating the part-time system. We're not going to claw anything back because it's such an insignificant sum. We don't want to throw the baby out of the bathwater for the sake of a couple of bob. So on to the main recommendation, which is recommendation 10.3, and that is the proposal to fund part-time nursery places in nursery and primary schools with effect from the 1st of September of this year be approved, subject to the Minister's approval of the appropriate changes to the scheme of delegation for schools. I so move those recommendations, but prepared to accept any questions or observations regarding this report.
Is there a second?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I'm happy to second the report, and in doing so, can I say that I think the key to this report is in fact that we currently don't meet our statutory requirement under the relevant acts, and if we continue with the current policy, we are open to potential challenge. So I'm happy to second the recommendations contained in the report.
Any questions? Councillor Mitten.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Could I just ask, how long have we been in breach of not meeting the statutory obligation?
Who's going to answer this?
Mr Mayor, I'm happy to take a stab at this answer, only because my children were in school at the time of reorganisation, and we've certainly been in breach since reorganisation, so that goes back to at least 1996, 97.
Councillor Jones?
Thank you, Chair. If I could just refer to the two paragraphs that Councillor Jones mentioned on page 159. It's the last two paragraphs there. Two questions, basically the same, so I think I can ask the same question for both of those. So if I could ask people to look at where it starts, the Welsh Government, a brighter future, and then the bit underneath, B, time. What is the response from anybody who wishes to answer this with regards to the points, the views raised here, and the proposed move towards cutting towards half-time? Do you think that they are compatible?
Can I answer this?
Yeah, I'll answer. We're not moving to part-time. What we're doing is that we're moving to a situation that is equitable across the authority.
I'm sorry, if I could come back on that. Part-time means a full day. So if that isn't part-time, I don't know what is.
For some children, they have part-time. For some children, they've got full-time. For some children, they have no access at all. So we're not reducing it to part-time for all children. We're just funding part-time so that it's an equitable provision across the local authority.
People in, or the people out, or children in, or children out. But it still boils down to a child going to school for half a day at that particular age, as opposed to a full day.
But some children don't have access to nursery provision at the time that they're eligible to at all. So it isn't a reduction for some, it's actually an increase. For some children who have no access, they will have access to what they're entitled to.
When the figure that you quoted is 200 throughout the borough, has that been broken down in terms of potential for each school, in terms of the geographical effect?
If I could just explain that, it's 200 in this academic year. Next year it would be more. Right, we're looking at a cohort of about 660 youngsters who are attaining the age of 3 in each academic year.
Have you a second question, Councillor Jones? No. Councillor Chaplin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have two questions. One is in relation to 1.1. How does one qualify to become a non-maintained educational provider? That's my first question. And the second question refers to paragraph 2.1. What steps are we taking to improve the outcomes for pupils in the foundation phase so we move up from being bottom of the heap again?
If I take the element on a non-maintained educational provision, some years ago the local authority decided to support provision outside of the schools in order to provide parental choice in terms of where if they couldn't get a place near in their local school, they had an option to actually have alternative provision rather than going into a school. So for instance, if you were waiting to go into a particular school, you could use that provision. They have to achieve the same quality standards as the schools. They're inspected by Estin in the same way. I'd have to get the actual detail on what qualifies, because I think it was at that point in time it was about identifying organisations that had the capacity and the capability and the qualifications to be able to be set up in that guise. Does that answer your question, Councillor?
does to a degree. My second question relates to Para 2.1. What are we doing to improve the outcomes for pupils within the foundation phase? Because currently we're at the bottom of the heap again.
If I could answer that question. We've got a range of strategies in place. One of the strategies is that we've employed a recently retired head teacher from Brecon Road Infants, who is an outstanding leader of the foundation phase. And Brecon Road Infants has historically done particularly well at the end of the foundation phase as well. She's working currently for 2.5 days across the borough to support the leadership of the foundation phase and the quality of teaching in the foundation phase. So there are a programme of activities to raise the quality in those two important aspects. The other aspect that we're working hard to improve is the quality of assessment. Because we actually believe that there are inconsistencies in our assessment, and the actual picture is probably not as bad as we think from that raw statistic of being 22 out of 22. So there are a range of strategies in place to raise the performance by the end of the foundation phase, which is when children reach the age of 7.
If I can just add to that as well, because there is the other element on this, is the obviously there's the introduction of the Flying Start programme, which currently stands at, I think it's 1,200 children will be in the Flying Start programme next year. But the element of that is the gap between, because they finish Flying Start at the end of the term following their 3rd birthday, they leave then, and the gap that they experience in the school doesn't help with the continuation of the child's development. So the proposal will seek to join these things up, and it is a Welsh Government requirement that there is a seamless transition from Flying Start into. Now, Flying Start obviously is not the whole of the borough, and it's still an expanding programme. There's still some areas that have to come online, but that is meant to also help challenge that element of about getting us away from that 22 out of 22.
I will be calling you now, Councillor Thomas, but I think Councillor Toomey wants to come in and answer. Have you finished, Councillor?
No, a comment, though.
No. Did you want to come in, Councillor Toomey?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, again, you know, it's about equality of provision. That's what we're talking about here. And again, as is stated in the report, and as my colleague Councillor Jones has already pointed out, that it is the quality of provision, not the quantity of provision. And the case and all evidence is pointing towards it. Quality of education is far better than just the quantity. Mr. Mayor, we're making great strides in some areas of attainment, but as has already been noted, in foundation phase, we're still 22 out of 22. And I think the point that the Chief Education Officer has made is absolutely well made, in as much as the person that's been appointed, the former head of Brecon Road Infant School, was an outstanding practitioner in foundation phase, and that school has never offered full-time nursery provision. It has always been part-time. So I think there again, that makes the point that we're trying to get across this evening.
Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I can draw attention, please, to page 181. At the bottom of the page there, it's got the geographic provision. Just a fairly simple question with, I'm sure, a very simple answer. But if you look at Ysgol Coed y Dderwyn, there are 88 pupils on roll in the academic year, only 60 places provision. I just wonder what, therefore, the local authority will do in terms of making available places where they're needed. It's also replicated slightly over Leaf at Edwardsville, although the difference there is only 2 places. But I just wonder what plans there are. You know, I have visions of buses arriving at various other schools with little bodies on because they can't be satisfied in their local primary school. And judging by the fact that Joyce and Lorraine are smiling, they've got a good answer to the question.
The figures represent the births in the area, but not necessarily the pupils that will go to those local schools, because across the county borough, of course, that will include children who are going to go to faith schools and also who are going to select Welsh medium primary education. Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I therefore was confused because the line follows across from Tydfil, and I automatically assumed that that number of 88 was the number on roll, or would be on roll for Tydfil. So it was a good answer. Perhaps I was misled by the stats, which, as we've known already tonight, is not difficult for me.
Any other questions? Any comments? Councillor Chaplin?
Yes, I'd like to commend the comment that's been made about the transition from Flying Start into nursery education, because this policy will ensure that.
Any other comments? Councillor Mitten?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just want to make a comment in relation to the Cabinet member's comment around 2.1, and that was that the evidence is available that even though we funded full-time places, if I get this right, we still placed 22 out of 22 authorities, and if I am correct, his words were the evidence suggests is the quality of education, as the leader just mentioned, but that's why other authorities are succeeding, because they fund part-time places. But the point I'm trying to make is that, you know, we have evidence within our own local authority from Goodness Nursery about the quality of the provision there, the quality of full-time nursery places, and what is actually achieved there is evident, and I don't think anybody can argue that point. And the other point that I wanted to make, especially as Chair of School Scrutiny, is, you know, it's not what other local authorities have done or are doing, it is about what our Chief Education Officer has done and put in place with her team, which is, you know, leading us forward, which has taken us into our ambitious targets because of the strategies that Lorraine has put in place, because of the new assessments that we are putting in place. So I think that I just wanted to clarify that point there, because, you know, for me, there's a bit of smoke and mirrors here. For me, this isn't about the 200 not engaging in nursery places. Sadly, for me, this is about what's outlined in 6.1. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Any other comments? Right, the recommendations is... It's been pointed out to me that Councillor Williams cannot vote because he left the chamber. Recommendations is on page 168. For 3 recommendations, can I ask you, the councillors, to vote, please?
It's carried.
That's carried. I believe Councillor Jones is taking this.
Again, Mr Mayor, I assume members have read this report. I'll focus on some of the more important points captured by the report. Paragraph 1 provides an introduction and background to the report. Straightforward, not going to say much about that. Over to paragraph 2. Paragraph 2 goes from 211 to 218 and includes a list of good features in terms of performance. And I'll single out not more than 3 of those 8. 211 talks about positive trends, and I was listening to some of the comments regarding the foundation phase and 22 to 22. Let me read this comment out to you. 211, positive trends in performance across all key indicators at foundation phase, key stage 2, key stage 3 and key stage 4, and the rate of progress is faster than at a national level. If we look at the next little bit of information at 2 and 3, it takes on board key stage 4. Performance at Key Stage 4 increased across all key indicators in 2014, with performance at the Level 2 threshold, including English and Welsh and Mathematics, increasing by 10.2% when compared to 2013. And if we look at 2.15, again relevant to Key Stage 4, GCSE, actual performance at Key Stage 4 is above local authority targets in all key indicators except the Key Stage 4 core subject indicator, where the target was missed by only 0.3 percentage points. I am confident that these improvements referred to in paragraph 2.1 to 2.18 are set to continue into the future. However, if we look then at the shortcomings, it shows that we still have work to do. Paragraph 2.2 or paragraph 2.2.1 emphasizes that performance at foundation phase, Key Stage 2 and Key Stage 3, and most indicators at Key Stage 4 remains below national averages. So although the trends are upwards, and I'll show you a few graphs in a moment regarding the upward trend, and you can make your own mind up then regarding what you think of performance, despite what you see in 2.1.1, in 2.2.1 we can't take our foot off the pedal. And I'll focus on two of those four indicators mentioned in 2.2.1. I'll focus on two of them in a moment. We also need to do more and keep our foot on the throttle, because at 2.2.5 we learn that actual performance at the end of 2014 is below local authority targets at foundation phase, Key Stage 2 and Key Stage 3. If we move down then into paragraph 3.2, I said a moment ago that I would focus on two of the key stages. And at 3.2, we talk about Key Stage 2. The trend in performance at level 4 and above is positive over the last 3 years in all core subjects. Performance is below the national average for all core subjects except Welsh first language. However, performance has increased and the rate of progress is faster than at the national level. Actual performance is below local authority targets in all core subjects. I'll show you something in a moment which I think will be a little bit enlightening to you in terms of good news. When compared to the other 21 local authorities, Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council is ranked 20th for English, first for Welsh, Welsh as a first language, 22nd for both mathematics and science, and 20th for the core subject indicator. Now, if you turn to page 206 and 207, we look first at the table at 3.4, which contains the Key Stage 2 results and the percentage of pupils achieving level 4 or above in 2014. We come down to English, and you can see where Merthyr were compared to the Welsh average, 2.1 percentage points behind. I'll say no more than that at this point in time. I'll quickly move on to Welsh first language. And if you look at the results there, you will see that Merthyr is ranked as number 1 of 22 authorities. And I believe that the Welsh schools teaching Key Stage 2 deserve special praise for doing what they've done in bringing their schools at Key Stage 2, Welsh First Language, up to the position that you see in front of you. Mathematics and science, you've heard me speaking about. We're on the upward trend. We're not so far behind, but we're still 22. At the core subject indicator, which is shown as CSI, core subject indicator, you will see that we are 1.9 percentage points off the Welsh average, and we've gone up to 20th position. Now what I want you to do is to move over to page 207 and look at the graph that represents the 3 subjects that make up the core subject indicator. That's English or Welsh together with maths and science. And you can see, if you start off at 2010, where we were lagging way, way behind the Welsh average. If you look at where we were in 2013, this is my one disappointment, because last year the leader will tell you and Lorraine will tell you, and the chairman of the recovery board will tell you, I expected us in 2014 to have exceeded the Welsh average. Unfortunately, what I forgot to take into consideration was not only was Merthyr on the upward trend, but the other 20 authorities in Wales were also on the upward trend, with the result that although we closed the gap, we are still 1.9 percentage points behind. But one thing I am sure of, confident of, this year we will break into that Welsh average. I'm a little bit disappointed we didn't do it last year, but this year we will do it. Now, if we then turn over to the Key Stage 4 results, which are shown on the graph at page 213, this tells a remarkable story in terms of the improvements that we have made and are making in Merthyr Tydfil as we speak. This considers Key Stage 4 Level 2 threshold, including English or Welsh and mathematics for the 15-year-olds and what they are achieving. And if again you go back to 2009, the beginning of the graph, and look at that, it's startling, it's frightening, and we should quickly move away from that. But it gets even worse in 2011-12, when we were 18.6% below the Welsh average. Last year, we were 14% below the Welsh average. In 2013-14, we've closed that gap to 6.5%. And I believe that come the examinations in June or May or June of this academic year, we are going to, all things being equal, see us break into that Welsh average for the first time. Finally, if you turn to page 221, and I finish at this point, you will see that there's a shaded area that takes in about 6 local authorities, most of which are local authorities scattered around us. And if you look at Merthyr's performance, and all these are at GCSE, if you look at Merthyr's performance at level 1 for 5 GCSEs at A to G in the first column, you will see Merthyr Tydfil ranked at 10. Ranked at 10th position, the highest position for many years. And it appears from that ranking that only Neath and Talbot have done better than Merthyr Tydfil in that category. So well done, Merthyr Tydfil schools at the level 1. If you come over to the level 2 threshold, 5 GCSEs at A star to C, you will see there that Merthyr has improved its position, no longer 22 or 21 or 20 as it was, or 19 or 18, it is ranked at 17. If you come over to the next column, which is the level 2 plus 5, that is 5 GCSEs, A star to C, including English or Welsh, first language, and maths, you will see Merthyr improved, although it's still to break into the 50%, it improved to 48.9% last year, which took us off the bottom, and I'm confident that it will go into the Welsh average on this academic year. As far as the core subject indicator is concerned, we are ranked at 21. And finally, as far as the capped point score is concerned, you can see that that represents the 8 highest scorings at the 8 best GCSEs. Merthyr is ranked at 14 and again is well in advance, except for Neath and Talbot. It is well in advance of all neighbouring authorities. So I'm pleased to report that we have made in the last 12 months enormous jumps forward, and there is, in my view, excellent news to be coming forward in June, July, August regarding where we are on Key Stage 2, foundation phase, if you want to bring that into it. But on Key Stage 2, the reason I singled it out at the beginning was that teachers from secondary schools who were responsible for the intake of Key Stage 2 pupils from primary schools were always quick to have a pot at the primary schools by saying, the first term that they come up with us in the secondary schools, we spend the first term getting them up to some sort of reasonable standard. What we've got in front of us this evening, they cannot justifiably make a statement to that effect anymore, because we are nearly into the Welsh average. And Key Stage 4 speaks for itself. All good news, and my congratulations goes out to Lorraine and the Education Department staff for producing these wonderful results, together with the staff and head teachers within our schools.
Second.
I'm moving that the report be received.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief. I think no one at all thought that you could possibly turn things around in a short space of time. We knew this was a process that was going to take some time, but this report shows us that the performance has improved right across the board, right? Attendance has improved, the number of children leaving school without any qualifications is down. In general, the special needs education is above the Welsh average. The gender gap is reducing, and that's a problem with all Welsh schools, is the gender gap. Boys in Merthyr are improving faster than the national average in all areas. On Appendix 4 on 219, which Harvey referred to, which is a comparison with the national average of every level, if you like. We're still below the Welsh average, but the difference from 2011-12 to 13-14, which is only 2 years, is phenomenal. It's amazing. There's only one, and that is attendance, where there isn't a substantial improvement. Even the foundation phase, which you were talking about earlier, we were 6.5 points below, and we're only 4 now, and there's a new strategy being put in place to improve that even further. So I think on the whole, we've come an awful long way in 2 years, and I think it is to be commended, and it's the staff here, it's the teachers in the school. I think everyone has taken on board the job of work that has to be done, and we can see the results already. And over the next year or two, you know, as Harvey said, we're going to be up there above the Welsh average.
So are you seconding?
Any questions? Any comments? Councillor Thomas?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we all recognise that there has been an enormous change in the culture in education and schools in this county borough. And I think we all welcome that, and I think we all applaud it. Can I join with Councillor Harvey-Jones in congratulating all those members of staff in schools who've contributed through all that hard work, and indeed the pupils who've gained, I believe, a great deal of confidence because of the success that they're now finding, whereas in the past all they found perhaps was mediocrity and even failure. As a chair of governors of a secondary school, can I personally thank Mrs. Lorraine Buck and her colleagues for the enormous amount of support that my school has had from this County Borough Council in the last 2 years, and fully recognise as a chair that that has contributed enormously to the ongoing success of my school. So well done to everybody. It's a pleasure to be able to sit in the chamber tonight and make these comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to concur with everything that's been said tonight regarding the progress that's been made. It's good to see our children going in the right direction. It's been bad news for a number of years, and I'm very, very pleased to see what's going on. I have to give my apologies, Mr. Mayor, because I have to leave the meeting, but are we voting on this now, or is it just an information report?
Any other comments?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I endorse everything everybody said, and I was very pleased to see the Leader of the Opposition congratulating everybody, and you know, the children, Lorraine Buck and everybody else. Can I just also add the fact that clearly when we came into power in 2012, we were faced with that horrible report in terms of us being put in special measures. So therefore I think we do need to commend the people at that side of the table who've done all the hard work, starting with the Chief Executive, but also on this side of the table, and that's Councillor Brendan Twomey and Councillor Harvey-Jones in the work that they have done, together with colleagues on this administration, to ensure we're getting where we are. Congratulations to everyone.
Any other comments? Right, councillors, we'll put it to the vote then. All those that, the recommendation, oops, I lost it. Pen? Page 2. Recommendation is on page 200. Can I ask you all to vote now, please? That's carried. At this point now, I have to ask for a proposer for a section 100. And a seconder.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Can I call for a vote for section 100, please? We're going to be one short now because of Councillor Smart.
Councillor Barrett? Councillor Tom Lewis, Councillor Simon Williams? Councillor Tony Chaplin, Councillor Simon Williams?
Councillor Chaplin, can you vote?
That's it, thank you. Members, the senior officers will all have to leave for the next agenda item because we all have to declare an interest. So we'll leave whilst this item is dealt with.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I'm sure everyone here today understands the very difficult financial situation that this council, along with all other councils in Wales, finds itself in. Over the next 3 years, we are going to have to find some £15 million of savings in order to meet the projected shortfalls in our budgets. We are continually working to identify savings from every avenue, but unfortunately we are faced with a situation where we still have a massive budget deficit. Over the past few months, the focus has been on trying to balance the books before the end of the current financial year. At this stage, with the savings found from service cuts, additional savings and other actions taken, I am pleased to announce that we are now on track to meet this objective. I would like to put on record my thanks to my Cabinet colleagues, along with their officers, for their efforts in keeping or helping to meet with this objective. As Cabinet Member for Transformational Change, Councillor Linda Matthews has already identified £2.75 million of savings, with over £2 million of this already banked. However, trying to find £15 million worth of savings is an enormous task. Calculations show us that the efficiency savings already identified will not be enough. We now need to look at other ways of finding these savings. I would like to take members back to May 2012, when this Labour administration came into office. At that time, the previous administration had taken a decision to change staff terms and conditions in a bid to save money. This administration overturned that decision and found other ways to make these savings. To demonstrate leadership and good faith with our staff during our first year in office, as leader, I took a 29% pay cut. My deputy leader, Councillor Phil Williams, took a 22% pay cut, and the remainder of the Cabinet, Councillors David Jones, Chris Barry, Brent Carter and Harvey Jones, all took a 14% pay cut. As leader of this council, I have always stressed that our staff are our biggest asset, and that changing employees' terms and conditions would always be a very last resort. Unfortunately, this now has to be an option. The only alternative would be to see a greater number of staff leaving through compulsory redundancy. To demonstrate solidarity with our staff, every elected member of this council has confirmed that they will all take an equivalent reduction in pay in line with any changes to staff pay and conditions. For the avoidance of any possible doubt, this includes the Labour group and all opposition councillors. We continue to work closely with the trades unions to find solutions that will minimise the number of compulsory redundancies. We must now reconsider looking at changing employees' terms and conditions as an option to find further savings, thereby safeguarding some jobs. It is with a very heavy heart that we have to go down this route. The choice is stark. To clear up any misunderstanding, any changes to terms and conditions will also include the Chief Executive and senior management team. 2 proposals have been put forward, and I have asked the Chief Executive to now engage with all his Green Book staff on what would be their preferred option, and also to come forward with any other efficiency ideas they may have. I cannot stress enough how much we need to continue to work together and achieve the very best outcome for all concerned. I would like to take this opportunity to thank staff for their continued support and cooperation through these very challenging times. Whilst we are still uncertain about the future in terms of local government reorganisation, we must continue to work towards creating a more sustainable future for the Council. Whatever the situation, I will always give my full commitment to do the very best that I can to get the best outcome for the staff who work extremely hard, delivering vital services to the residents of our county borough.
Thank you, Leader. Item number 25, to receive communications from His Worship the Mayor. I have one communication I wish to let you all know. I wish to inform you that Councillor Graham Davis is still in Prince Charles Hospital on Ward 10 and awaiting test. And I wish you a very good night and a safe journey home.